Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea's employment rate for December rises to its highest level in 22 years. Possibly a sign the government's policies are working, but those new jobs went more to some age groups than others. South Korea's finance ministry announces plans to develop the country's bio industry in a more diverse range of fields, going beyond medical applications to food resources and fuels. And the top diplomats of South Korea and the United States look for ways forward on the North Korea nuclear talks. They also discuss a possible role for South Korea in defending the Strait of Hormuz near Iran. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The top diplomats of South Korea and the U.S. have been discussing North Korea as they try to revive the momentum for dialogue in the stalled denuclearization talks. Our Kim Min-ji starts us off.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa and U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo reaffirmed their close coordination on North Korea. The top diplomats met in California on Tuesday to discuss the situation on the Korean Peninsula, alliance issues, and other regional and international matters. Speaking to reporters following the meeting, Kang said talks between North Korea and the U.S. and between the two Koreas should complement each other, but added that they can't always move at the same pace. She pointed out that Seoul and Pyongyang must continue dialogue to keep alive the momentum for North Korea's engagement amid the nuclear standoff between the North and Washington. That said, Kang and Pompeo shared views on initiatives which the two Koreas can work on without violating UN sanctions, to which the U.S. showed understanding for South Korea's determination. The talks were the first between the two diplomats in 9 months and come after North Korea warned of taking shocking actual action and threatened to showcase a new strategic weapon. On rising tensions in the Middle East, Kang and Pompeo vowed close cooperation. As for a U.S.-led initiative to safeguard the Strait of Hormuz near Iran, Kang said that Washington holds a position that countries that have a large economic stake in the region must contribute to such efforts. Noting that South Korea relies on the strait for oil-related trade, Kang added that Seoul is interested in the matter and will be considering ways to contribute from multiple angles, but that a decision will be made based on the safety of the Korean people and companies in the area, as well as its ties with Iran. The talks were followed by a trilateral meeting with Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi. The diplomats agreed that three-way cooperation is essential to ensure regional peace and security, and reaffirmed the importance of coordination for achieving North Korea's denuclearization. Kang and Motegi also held a one-on-one on the sidelines to discuss efforts to solve their bilateral dispute over trade and historical issues, vowing to continue dialogue through diplomatic channels. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And the U.S. continues to call on North Korea to come back to the negotiating table, saying it's hopeful the regime will make the right choice. At the same time, however, Washington is continuing to pressure the regime through sanctions. Oh Jung-hee reports.
2 steps forward and a step or 2 back. That's how U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo describes the current situation with North Korea. Speaking to Silicon Valley business leaders in San Francisco on Monday local time, Pompeo said Washington remains in communication with the North as it tries to persuade the regime to denuclearize. He said he remains hopeful North Korea will make the right decision, not just for the world, but for the North Korean people as well. The top U.S. diplomat added that the North's weapon systems pose a real risk to the world, but insisted the U.S. doesn't pose a security risk to the North Koreans. He added that the Trump administration wants a brighter future for the people of North Korea, and if the right arrangement is made, the two sides can have a serious conversation and hopefully convince North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to move away from nuclear weapons. The message comes as Washington continues to press North Korea for talks after a birthday message was delivered from U.S. President Donald Trump to Kim Jong-un last week. But in the meantime, the U.S. keeps tightening the economic screws on the regime. According to the U.S. Treasury Department on Tuesday, Washington has sanctioned 2 North Korean entities for helping the regime send laborers abroad. Targeted are North Korea-based Namgang Trading Corporation and a China-based North Korean lodging facility called Beijing Sukbakso. The sanctions freeze the entity's property and interests in the U.S. or those in possession of Americans and bans all U.S. dealings with them. North Korean workers sent overseas are a major source of income for the regime. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Iran says it has detained several people over the shooting down of a Ukrainian passenger plane last week. On Tuesday, security camera analysis showed that 2 missiles fired 30 seconds apart shot down the plane, killing everyone on board. Yoon Jung-min has the details.
Iran has arrested several people over the downing of a Ukrainian passenger plane last week. In a televised speech on Tuesday, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani called the accident a very painful and unforgivable error. Dismissing criticism that the Iranian military has attempted to cover up the accident, the president pledged a thorough investigation and punishment for those involved in the incident, which killed everyone on board the plane. He added that a special court will be formed given the seriousness of the matter.
The judiciary should form a special court with experts and a high-ranking judge. This is not an ordinary case. All the world will be watching this case of ours.
The New York Times on Tuesday said it has analyzed the security camera footage and verified that 2 missiles fired 30 seconds apart shot down the aircraft. The newspaper said the missiles were launched from an Iranian military facility 8 miles away from the plane. Over the past few days, protesters have taken to the streets in Iran to condemn its government for the terrible incident. Iran denied the shooting at first, but later admitted it had shot down the plane, saying it has mistakenly shot down the flight amid heightened tensions with the U.S. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
In other news, the World Health Organization says there has been some human-to-human transmission of the mysterious new pneumonia-like virus that recently broke out in China. The WHO says it's preparing for the possibility of a wider outbreak because with the situation in its early stages, they don't yet have a clear clinical picture. The organization says it sees a lot of similarities between the new virus and SARS or MERS, which could help in developing vaccines or treatments. K-pop megastars BTS are building a bridge between the worlds of pop music and fine art, launching a global art project called Connect BTS. The 7-member band is collaborating with curators and galleries around the world to showcase the works of 22 artists in 5 different cities: London, Berlin, Buenos Aires, New York, and Seoul. The first exhibition was unveiled on Tuesday at the Serpentine Gallery in London. The rest are scheduled to open in Berlin today, in Buenos Aires next Tuesday, in Seoul on January 28th, and finally in New York on February 4th. They'll last for at least 2 weeks and up to almost 3 months. BTS will release their new album, Map of the Soul 7, on Friday. The South Korean government's efforts to boost employment seem to be working. The employment rate last year reached its highest level in over 2 decades. Kim Da-mi has the details.
South Korea's unemployment rate remained steady at 3.4% last month. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday, around 27,000 new jobs were created in the month of December. In addition, the overall employment rate last year reached almost 61%, the highest in 22 years. Statistics Korea attributed the rise to the government's job creation policies, hinting at a brighter outlook for the new year. By sector, social and health services and the accommodation industry have seen the most jobs created, while employment figures actually fell in finance and construction and in the wholesale and retail sectors. For the year of 2019, the country's jobless rate was also unchanged at 3.8%. The number of unemployed people has remained over 1 million for the 4th straight year. People in their 20s, 50s, and 60s were the biggest beneficiaries of the newly created jobs. However, just like in previous months, employment figures remained poor for those in their 30s and 40s who need full-time, stable jobs to support their families. Calling the latest figures a significant recovery, Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki vowed to keep that momentum in the new year, as well as creating jobs for those in their 40s and in the manufacturing industry. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
And the South Korean government is unveiling ambitious plans to nurture the country's bio industry, saying it's an important and vital sector for economic and innovative growth. Hong Yoo has more.
If 2019 was the year the South Korean government focused on fostering the biohealth sector of the overall bio industry, 2020 is going to be more about green and white bio. This shift comes after the finance ministry came under fire, with critics saying their bio investments were too centered on medicine and medical treatments. So from now on, the ministry has vowed to devise policies that will help the green and white bio sector thrive going forward. Green bio uses biotechnology to create food resources, and white bio uses plant resources to develop biofuels. Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi held the first innovative growth strategy meeting of the year on Wednesday, during which he discussed the main tasks left for the country to stimulate innovative growth in the bio industry. A task force team made up of officials from 10 ministries and 10 policy think tanks have been meeting since November of last year to come up with 5 strategies. First, they suggest a continued investment in research and development that can spur groundbreaking growth. Human resources that have vast knowledge of multiple new technologies will also be nurtured. The government also aims to create a mutually beneficial ecosystem for the bio industry by providing public funds to help their tech go from ideas to the market. Most importantly, regulations and policies will be overhauled to revitalize the bio market. That starts with reducing the permit evaluation period of innovative medical equipment, those that use AR and VR technologies, from the current 90 days. If these strategies prove successful, the ministry believes bio could become a strategic industry to succeed the semiconductor industry in the years to come. Hong-yu, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Song Soo-young, Professor of Business at Kyunghang University. Professor Song, thank you for coming on today.
Yes, thank you for inviting me again.
So on the 15th, this Wednesday at the White House, the U.S. and China will be signing their Phase 1 trade deal. But reports are saying the U.S. won't be lifting any more tariffs until after the November election. So with that, we've seen a little volatility in the financial markets. What's the story globally and here in Korea?
Yeah, currently the Korean market has shown some decline in stock price, overall index, and in the Tokyo also has shown the 0.51% decrease of the stock. So, however, even though the current development in the U.S.-China trade turns out to be some kind of positive aspect, but whereas still the conflict within and between those two countries will continue as long as the two arch rivals does not fully agree with each other for the who will be dominant over the next decades. So that is the main issue of the current market reaction.
Yeah, and we still don't fully know what's in the trade deal. I guess we'll find out at some point soon. But the U.S., meanwhile, is tightening the rules on foreign investment with China in mind. The Treasury Department will be strengthening screening for foreign investors in areas deemed to be a national security risk, such as communications, energy, and data. So there are concerns that could create some new uncertainties. What do you say to that?
Yeah, actually, that is particularly in the Phase 1 deal, actually assured China will import and purchase U.S. Agricultural products and soybeans, but they do not make any concession for some high technology levels, such as 5G communications issues and Huawei. So clearly, the U.S. Congress hawks are very concerned about the development. Particularly, there is no actual concession with respect to technologically advanced areas. But the problem is the U.S. semiconductor industry has exported their semiconductors to Huawei company very much. So that is kind of some kind of trade-off. However, the problem is what congressmen in U.S. and other experts are concerned is Trump maybe just focus on his re-election as president. Therefore, he make some kind of recess or the concession to the China just to get more votes out of the U.S. people. particularly the agricultural states. So that is the main concern that lies, and that could cast a little bit shadow over the prospect. But however, the two superpowers, as far as they are aware of the cost and of the conflicting trade dispute over two countries, therefore, I cautiously expect the prospect is be positive. But for such as outsiders or observers such as Korea and the other economies should be very anxiously watch over with the potential collateral damage of the upcoming dispute. But I cautiously anticipate the truce will continue, and then the situation will be improved in the future.
Got it. Well, back over here to Korea. According to new employment data from Statistics Korea, the employment rate last year at over 60% was the highest in 22 years. For young people, the employment rate was the lowest since 2013. What stands out to you in these numbers, and what do you make of them?
Yeah, actually, that is very good news, and that is totally very reversal of the 2 days ago, the report about among the OECD countries, Korea, South Korea, the youngsters whose age between 25 and 29 has been the unemployment rate percentage is the highest among the OECD countries. That seems very bad, but actually the diagnosis, I think, is out of the mark because in Korea, the discrepancy of wage is huge between the big giant companies and the small companies. Therefore, the youngsters who are still young look for a chance to get a job in the big companies. That's why the percentage rate of the unemployment among 25 and 29 years relatively very high. But however, after that, the new report about the labor market situation is improving. However, some critics blame that is not a permanent job at all, just a temporary job. The increase does not guarantee the welfare of the people. However, that is, I think, is misleading and out of the mark. The reason is mainly we are in the phase of the job displacement because of the adoption of the information technology and artificial intelligence. Therefore, necessarily, the job market could be prevalent, particularly for the temporary jobs for the time being, until we have totally transformed the economy as a whole. So it takes time. Therefore, until that, we have to endure or persevere this kind of some temporary characteristics of the job situation. That is the typical of the gig economy. So to that regard, I think at least to get a job is good news, and particularly this kind of reversal is a V-shaped return of the labor market and employment market. That could help recover the Korean economy because the aggregate demand is expected to be increased for the upcoming years.
Very interesting, Dr. Song. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, Samsung Electronics acquired the second highest number of patents in the U.S. last year. The South Korean tech giant has held the #2 ranking for 14 consecutive years now. Global patent database IFI claims reports that more than 333,000 patents were registered in the U.S. last year. IBM ranked first with over 9,200 patents, and Samsung had 6,400. Samsung's local rival LG Electronics ranked 6th. Other companies in the top 10 include Canon, Microsoft, Intel, and Apple. Chinese firm Huawei ranked 10th, joining the top 10 list for the first time. Samsung was in first, though, in the size of its active patent family, which refers to the cumulative number of patents registered across its affiliates. The United States and China are set to sign their so-called Phase 1 trade deal on Wednesday, local time, a step towards ending their trade war. According to Reuters, the agreement's expected to be signed in a ceremony at the White House, attended by President Trump, Washington's top trade negotiator Robert Lighthizer, and his Chinese counterpart Liu He. Sources say the Phase 1 deal will include a pledge from Beijing to buy $200 billion of American goods over 2 years in 4 industries, including manufactured goods and agricultural products. In return, Washington's expected to cancel some of the tariffs that were due to come into force last month and is likely to cut a 15% tariff in half on $120 billion of Chinese goods. However, the exact details are yet to be released. The European Union has unveiled a massive investment plan to make the European continent climate neutral by the year 2050. The European Commission said Tuesday that its €1 trillion or $1.1 trillion plan will make the EU's economy more environmentally friendly and tackle climate issues over the next 10 years. The investment will be funded by the public and private sectors in the EU. The Commission first proposed the European Green Deal last year. Officials say member countries applying for financial support should present a detailed plan to Brussels on how they'll slash emissions. Meanwhile, Italy is suffering its worst air pollution in decades, and it's taken emergency measures banning diesel cars from the road. But experts say it's a wake-up call for the country. South Korea has also been taking emergency measures in recent weeks. Lee Kyung-eun reports.
Italy has been under a so-called smog emergency for 10 days in a row. Fine dust particles smaller than 10 micrometers have spiked above 50 micrograms per cubic meter in major Italian cities, including Rome, Milan, Florence, and Venice. With the smog persisting at a level considered dangerous, the affected cities have issued traffic restrictions banning diesel vehicles from the roads. In Rome, all diesel vehicles are banned from the green band area during rush hour, while higher polluting vehicles are banned for the whole day. It is the first time the city has applied such measure to all categories of diesel vehicles since last February, and this has affected some 1 million drivers in the city. Along with similar restrictions on diesel vehicles, Milan has banned bonfires, barbecues, and fireworks, and Venice has restricted the use of the heaviest polluting motorbikes. A similar situation has been seen on the other side of the world. Here in South Korea, the government introduced preliminary fine dust reduction measures last year, which include a rotation system for the public sector, which means cars with even-numbered license plates can only be driven on even-numbered days, and those with odd-numbered plates on odd-numbered days. But the countries are in need of more fundamental measures accompanying these efforts. Experts in both countries say that there is a number of climate factors to consider when it comes to air pollution, such as warm temperatures, low precipitation, and weak wind, which all contribute to trapping the dust in the air. They say to tackle climate issues, countries should take long-term comprehensive measures like enhancing regulations on factory operations, along with short-term policies like the traffic restrictions. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
Speaking of climate issues, the average temperature of the world's oceans reached the highest point on record last year. The Guardian reports that it's a sign of global warming and that studies show the oceans are getting warmer every year. According to a recent report in the journal Advances in Atmospheric Sciences, the amount of heat added to the oceans is equivalent to every person on the planet running 100 microwave ovens 24/7. The researcher warns that warmer oceans could lead to more severe floods, droughts, and wildfires. They also claim sea levels will rise by 1 meter by the end of the century at the current rate, potentially displacing 150 million people worldwide. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.